Hi everyone, I'm Mike and welcome to my movie review. Now, being a huge movie and TV fan, I wanted to start sharing some of my thoughts, raves and disappointments with you all. So let's get started. Now, I'm going to begin with Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. Now, I know it's the ninth of the series, but being the latest one and the last one of the series, I thought it seemed the most relevant to do first. But don't worry, I'll get onto the other one soon. Before I get into the nitty-gritty, let's start with where we left off the last film. So in a quick summary. Rey's still learning about the Force. She doesn't know anything about her past or her parents. Rey and Kylo Ren have this weird connection that we can't quite explain yet. Luke is dead, or most likely dead, given that we saw him literally disappear. Kylo Ren is still bad, but reporting to who, given that Snoke died in the last film. We know that the First Order is still rising. We know that the rebellion is just about surviving once again. So the next question to ask before The Rise of Skywalker is, where did we want this film to go, or what do we want to happen at the end? So basically what we wanted was a proper conclusion to the 9-film Skywalker saga. So we want most of the stories covered up, most of the bits and bobs tied up in a nice little bow. We basically want to find out about Rey's parents and her upbringing, to shed some light on our Jedi Force-related background and skills. Basically find out who she is. We also want to find out what happens to Kylo Ren. Does he become good? And what does he do? Obviously, because all the films are about good against evil, we want to see the rebellion defeat the First Order or the Sith again and see how they're going to do this. We also want to see how and why Palpatine has returned. We were given this tease of his return, but we're not really sure if it's actually real or a Force ghost or something, so we want to know a bit more about that. Of course, we've got other questions, are we going to see, or are there more Jedi around? Are there more Sith? Will we see some Force ghosts, maybe some of the older characters in there? And how are they going to deal with the Princess Leia / Carrie Fisher's untimely death? How are they going to fit that into the story? And of course there's a few other side plots that they'll no doubt answer or try and answer, a bit more about Finn and Poe and of course 3PO and R2-D2. They'll definitely get a feature in here. Now, before the film came out, I made some predictions about it, and I've got to be honest, they didn't play out at all. I was way off. The film was very unpredictable. So let's get started. So we'll start off by having a look at the story. And you could probably sum it up by saying it's the same as what we've had before. So, everybody finds out that Palpatine didn't die and he's building a new empire called the Final Order. Then becomes a race against time for the Resistance to find Palpatine and stop him from launching this new Final Order. Of course, this falls on Rey to find him. And then it becomes a bit of a find a clue, get to the next clue, and this continues throughout the film until they eventually meet on a planet called Exegol, where Palpatine is raising his Final Order and a fleet of Star Destroyers. Now, during this search, Kylo and Rey spend much of the film having these physical visions where they talk and battle until they meet each other for real on the wreckage of the Death Star for a showdown. She eventually kills him, then sees good in him while he's on his deathbed and saves him using the Force. They both separate. Meanwhile, the Rebellion or the Resistance rally once again, this time with the help of Lando Calrissian. Kylo and Rey eventually meet again, this time on Exegol, thanks to a Sith Wayfinder to guide them there. Palpatine reveals that he is and he started the Sith, and that Rey is his granddaughter, and that she should take the throne as Empress. Kylo and Rey work together to defeat Palpatine. Kylo turns good, then dies in Rey's arms. So there we have it, a fairly basic storyline, but of course with many little questions and sub-stories to fit along the way. To be honest, probably what we should have expected. So in terms of the story, personally I'd have liked something a bit new and different and exciting. This was another original trilogy storyline with the same conclusion. Yeah, and I sometimes like the idea of the bad guys winning. But I suppose in the end this is supposed to be a kid's film and have a kid's story, and we can't really portray the Sith to win in the end. I suppose that is understandable, and the entire Skywalker story is about good versus evil. But there is some variation to be had. With that in mind though, the story did flow fairly well and we were pushed through it at absolute lightning speed. I mean, there was barely a moment to stop and think and breathe. Personally, I'd have preferred a slower story like the originals and the prequels, but they created so much story and characters and things to happen in this film that really wasn't possible. And at the end, I wouldn't have minded a cliffhanger. You know, they could have left a few things open for spin-off series or films, but it seems like they wanted to conclude the story once and for all and draw a line under it, which I can understand. But there is nothing wrong with keeping a few things open, you know, keep everyone on their toes thinking about what can happen next in the story. Now, a quick mention on Palpatine and that part of the story. I wasn't a huge fan of this. I mean, I love the character and I did in the other films, but as far as I'm concerned, he died. And they should have just left it at that. You know, couldn't they have come up with a new exciting story and not bring back a character from the dead? To me, it felt a little bit sloppy that they couldn't come up with something fresh and new. Of course, this opens up the idea that they can bring anyone back now. No one will die anymore. So in any future films and TV shows, anyone can be in it that's been killed off before, which I find it a little bit disappointing. And was it a good twist that he was granddad to Rey? You know, kinda yes. And to be honest, we really should have seen it coming. I personally thought it would have been a good idea if Rey had been like an immaculate conception, like Anakin, and she'd been born to create balance to the Force. You know, Kylo was born destined to be bad, and Rey could have been born destined to be good, you know, creating a balance, just like they've kind of mentioned quite a few times in the films before. So, I mean, that was another possibility. I mean, they clearly wanted to bring Palpatine in, which is fine, and that was a way of bringing Palpatine in and having it make sense. Another thing I'd have quite liked about the film would have been a tease of more Jedi and Sith being around. You know, maybe see some in the background who flee perhaps, you know, a glimpse that more may be to come in movies and TV shows. I mean, I've no doubt we're going to see more Jedi and Sith anyway in the films and TV shows, but it would be nice to have a little bit of a glimpse here. You know, rather than leave Rey as the only one left and is now the only, once again, a new hope, that everything is going to start up and she's going to, you know, relaunch the Jedi again. And of course, my other thing about the story would have been, you know, bringing in stuff from the Expanded Universe. I mean, I love the Expanded Universe books. There's so many great stories. I'd have liked a few of those to be brought in and a few links maybe, but of course I should have realised and wasn't really expecting it. That was never going to happen. Disney has clearly taken a sidestep away from the Expanded Universe, which, you know, is their prerogative, but, you know, I just wish there would be a few more links in there. There's some great stories in the books. So now onto the characters and some of their roles in the film. You know, start with Princess Leia. I mean, I think that was quite fitting. It was very nicely done. Of course, we didn't want to see the character get written out, but it was probably the only way, and she died reaching out to her son, which was really nice. Chewie's reaction was really emotional as well. Kylo Ren turning good. I mean, we've seen this done before with Anakin, so it was nothing new and exciting. I think it was just really predictable, which was a bit of a shame. You know, I did like his reaching out to Rey and their visions, and let's be honest, he's a great actor and fitted the part really well. Kylo giving his life to Rey, I mean, I've already felt like we saw this too much in the film. We were just introduced to the skill, and now they're doing it left, right and centre. And personally, I'd have kept Kylo rather than Rey, but hey, that's probably just me. Knights of Ren, they looked really cool, and we just wanted to see more of them. Sadly, they were just way underused and a bit disappointing in the end. They didn't say a word and they got absolutely destroyed by Kylo. And what doesn't make sense to me is when they battled Kylo on Exegol. Surely he's their master and they serve him. Couldn't he have just told them what to do and they could have just kept him on his side and not killed them? Unless I'm completely missing something there. Rey, now I'm not a big fan of the character anyway, and this film didn't improve her for me. I always felt like she's an inferior and disappointing Jedi, and just a bit irritating. You know, she went running off to the island in a half copying Luke and then destroying the ship so she couldn't leave. In fact, it was a great scene there when Luke says, "What are you doing?" and basically tells her off for being a naive Jedi. And the training, was a little bit laughable, running around the forest, jumping over things, and she trips and can't handle the remote. She just isn't a good enough Jedi yet. And of course, Rey being a Palpatine, talked about that earlier. I quite liked it, and of course wasn't expecting it. Basically, to sum her up, she's still got a lot of training to do if she's going to be respected as a Jedi, in my opinion. Luke, appearance was quite small and a little bit too small for me, but I think it worked well with the story, and he was quite tolerable, a lot more than he was in the last film anyway. And it was good that he was showing Rey guiding her the correct way to do things and admitting that what he did was a mistake and that he shouldn't have exiled himself on that island. Lando Calrissian, always loved him and his character and the story, and even enjoyed it in the Solo movie as well. Anything I thought was a little bit strange was where he's living. He's now not living on Bespin or somewhere else. He's always been known for his riches and finery, and then he's basically found living in a trailer, slumming it. Of course, no doubt there's going to be a comic book or a novel explaining all of that, so we'll find out soon what happened there. Finn, another character I didn't really like in these sequels. Unless it was the script, I don't know. My main question on this film was the Force. I didn't like that part of the story at all and felt that it was really unnecessary. And the fact that Finn's constantly worrying over Rey. She's a trained, skilled Jedi. She has all these powers and can handle herself. If anything, this just made a bad impression on women. I'm just saying. Didn't trust that she could manage herself. And now to Poe. My other question again is somehow he got made into a general. I'll mention this more in the other sequels, but he's constantly disobeying orders, instructions, and advice from others who have more experience than him. How did he get a promotion? That's not how things work. And unfortunately, they've now basically made him into the new Han. In fact, they've given him a similar backstory. That's a whole other question in itself. Just because he's rebellious, does he have to have the rebellious storyline? Not everyone's a smuggler. And Poe and Finn, a lot of people were calling out for them to be lovers. I didn't see it for me. All I saw was bickering over 2 hours. In fact, it was just irritating to watch those two in a scene together. Han's return, I thought that was a great touch bringing him back, something I definitely wasn't expecting at all. There's some debate as to whether he was a Force ghost or a memory. For me, he's just definitely a memory for me. And I've got to admit, interesting choice of hair and makeup as he looked like he just got out of bed. C-3PO, great touch with the memory wipe and starting afresh and him asking questions and introducing himself just like we saw in A New Hope. I'd have liked to have his memory not return though. I thought that would have had a better effect. But again, are they a little bit too afraid to do this? And I suppose, bringing it back by R2 was probably the most fitting and best way to do it, given their history together. But I thought that part of the storyline did work quite well, and it was quite nicely done. Zori Bliss, absolutely fantastic. Great relationship with Poe to bring the character into the story. To be honest, I wish we'd seen more of her. I didn't like the sexual stuff there. It felt really sleazy and didn't fit with the film, but the character was really cool and a great costume and great mask and everything. Now I want to mention briefly about Rose. There's been a lot of talk about, was it a lack of screen time? As far as I'm concerned, wasn't needed or necessary. Her story wasn't important and didn't need to be told or expanded on. In fact, there's probably more exciting small character stories to tell than hers. I didn't really understand why everyone was so obsessed. We didn't really find much about her in the previous film. Why did we need to find more? Couldn't she just be a background character? But no doubt, given the popularity of the character, we'll find out in a book, I'm sure. General Pride, Richard E. Grant, really liked the character. He's fantastic. He felt like a proper general, and instantly seeing that Hux was the spy, perfectly done. We've talked about Palpatine a few times before, but as I'll reiterate, I really like the character. I wasn't sold on the story, but great to see him again. He looked great, and what he did was fun and entertaining. Apart from him being the Sith, and the ending him would end the Sith, and is that really what they're going to do? No more Sith around just because you've killed him? I definitely hope not. So now to the planets and locations. I mean, I love the Star Wars locations and planets that we've been treated to in every film. The Rise of Skywalker delivered a few exciting new ones and a few disappointing and underused ones. So the Resistance base, fairly similar to the Forest Moon of Endor, fairly unexciting. We didn't really get to see much of it apart from the fact that it's a bit like a jungle. Pasaana, I'm going to say it, another sand-based planet. What is it with Star Wars and sand planets? There are others out there to choose from. I mean, what happened on the planet and the festival was kind of cool, but sand again. Kijimi, thought that looked really cool. We just wanted to see more of it, and that's where we met Zori Bliss. And it's also the ice planet we saw at the beginning of the film, which added another great dimension to it. Exegol, which we've mentioned before, was the hidden world of the Sith. Great looking dark and barren landscape, perfect for the Sith. The temple looked really cool as well. It looked like it was hovering over the earth. Fantastic. Kef Bir, that's the ocean moon of Endor. Fairly ordinary looking Earth-like planet, greenery and ocean with the big waves, which housed the wreckage of the second Death Star. Of course, the planet was kind of overshadowed by the Death Star and the battle between Kylo and Rey. So we got a few exciting locations, but not nearly enough in this one. But I suppose the film wasn't necessarily about introducing even more stuff, but concluding things. So that probably makes up for the fact that there might have been a lack of planets and locations. So now to the other bits section. Basically, I've got a load of other bits that I wanted to mention and I didn't know where to put them, so I'm going to bump them all together here. So we returned to the Death Star, which I thought it was great and it looked good, and we got to see down the corridors that we were so familiar with before and saw stormtroopers, helmets and bodies and things, which I thought looked really cool. My one criticism would be that if you go back to watch Return of the Jedi, when that Death Star exploded, it was disintegrated. There was not even a little bit left. So I don't really know how it was on that planet. Star Destroyers, again, they looked really cool, but if I'm going to criticise them, it was a really sloppy creation. Why create them so they're all centrally controlled to take off together? It basically felt like another Death Star with a very easy flaw to exploit, and of course that's what they did. Really disappointing from Palpatine. The scene with all the ships arriving at the end, and I thought that looked really cool. It was really great to see them, but one thing I'd have liked a few more close-ups. Maybe see what the ships are. We might have seen a few familiar faces or characters or species that we liked. It felt like a little bit sloppy that they just clearly put a backdrop on, and that was all we were able to see. Kylo's Star Destroyer, I thought that looked really cool. Great scenes walking around it. It felt like the Death Star again in A New Hope. Very white, clean and clear. Fantastic. Now, right at the end, we saw two planets. We saw Moon of Endor and Bespin. I thought it was great to see them, but I found it really odd that we only saw two. Why did we not see more planets in their victory scenes? Like we had at the end of Return of the Jedi. It's a little bit weird that we saw these two, and just these two. I mean, great seeing them, don't get me wrong, and it was nice seeing the Ewoks, definitely quite special. Force Ghosts, I mean, I expected to see something at the end, but I was personally hoping for maybe Yoda, Anakin and Obi-Wan to be there as well. But, good to have Luke and Leia, but I'd have liked the rest, and I definitely would have preferred the rest, and I was expecting the rest. But on the other side, we had the scene with the Jedi voices, which was great to hear them all, Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan, Mace Windu. I mean, so many names, you can read them online, and some from the Clone Wars series as well. So that was really cool and nicely done. Luke and Leia training, I thought that looked really great. They did such a good job of making them look young. Finally looked a little bit CGI, but it was really cool, and seeing Leia with the lightsaber was kind of nice as well. Now the Sith dagger, I always thought this was a little bit disappointing. First of all, the look of it. I thought it looked a little bit cheap, and in fact just a really poorly made prop. And of course, if you're going into the dagger itself, we knew the dagger was coming because we'd seen it from the teaser trailer and we'd heard about it in the universe outside the movies, so naturally we got excited. I thought maybe it would have had some special powers, but nope, it was basically just a map. And I also thought that it would have had a great history and maybe been really old and built way before before the Death Stars for starters, but it seems like that's not the case. I'm guessing it was built after the Death Star had been destroyed, unless, of course, the Sith knew about it all along. They knew exactly what was going to happen to the second Death Star. They predicted it, so they were able to make this dagger beforehand. They knew where the Death Star was going to land when it was kind of partly destroyed, and they already knew that you'd be able to hold it up in a particular way and find out where the Wayfinder was. It's definitely possible. I'm not really buying it. General Hux revealing that he was the spy, I thought that was dreadful. And then them asking the reason why you're helping us, and it was just, I don't like Kylo Ren. What, just because you didn't like him? Force powers, we were introduced to healing and the ability to kind of transport and teleport items. A bit of the lightsaber, I thought that kind of worked well. Quite nicely done. A good kind of feature. Does the healing go a little bit too far? I'm not sure. We've seen it before, actually. If you think about it, in A New Hope, with Obi-Wan kind of putting his hand on Luke. Is that the Force healing that we saw? And of course, we saw something in The Mandalorian, which was interesting as well. I think to mention, are they? I mentioned it briefly before. Are they too afraid to kill characters off? Especially in this film, only Princess Leia went. Chewie could have gone, and I was really expecting either Poe or Finn to go. Maybe one of them would have sacrificed themselves for the greater good. But of course they didn't, and we had a full set of characters start the film and a full set of characters finish. Again, it's a kid's story. Kids want the characters to survive. Palpatine's guards, a little special mention to them. The Red Stormtroopers, Red Guards, they look really cool, I have to admit, and we saw them in Return of the Jedi, and we saw kind of slightly different ones in this film as well, and I really like them. They're fantastic. Staying with Palpatine slightly, the throne room scene at the end, it was identical to what we saw in Return of the Jedi. In that film with Luke, he opened the window and looked out on the battle and basically said, I'm going to destroy all your friends. What did they do in this one? Opened up the ceiling, said to Rey, I'm going to destroy all your friends. Almost carbon copy. He looks really cool, but we've seen it before. Stormtroopers, once again, can't shoot. We saw some films, I think it was on Kylo's Star Destroyer, with the Stormtroopers trying to fire at them, and it was dreadful. But kind of amusing. It's become a bit of a thing now, so, I'll live with that. And slightly on, I'll be speaking about this again when I go back to the other two films, the jokes. For me, there's too many of them. These Star Wars films were never meant or didn't start with having jokes in them. Think about the original trilogy and the prequels. There are no jokes. They're fairly serious. And they've decided to bring jokes in these films for some reason. I don't know whether it's because Disney's bought them and they're trying to replicate their Marvel success. Where it's full of jokes and they're quite funny and humorous. For me, most of them don't work in the Star Wars universe. And another thing to mention, Porgs. Thankfully, I think there was only one scene with them in, so I didn't have to leave the cinema. Definitely the worst character that they could have brought into the films. So really pleased that they didn't feature in this one. And I want to talk a little bit just about the kiss. And no, I'm not talking about the same-sex kiss towards the end, because there's nothing wrong with that. It's not even a story. I'm talking about Kylo and Rey. I don't know why it was in there. There was no sexual tension between them. No hint that this might happen. I don't even think the audience wanted this to happen. Couldn't he have just died in her arms? It just felt like a really odd scene to have. It didn't work for me. So on to a conclusion. Now I've tagged a couple of bits onto the conclusion as they were at the end of the film. So we'll start with the lightsabers at the end. For me, it was just the wrong planet to bury them on, and I don't know why they were buried on Tatooine. If you think about it, Princess Leia, while she was on Tatooine, was enslaved by Jabba, so there's no reason to bury her lightsaber there. Luke saw Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru die there, and he also couldn't wait to get off the planet, so there's no reason to bury his lightsaber there either. So I don't know why they wanted to revisit. I presume it was just to go full circle and return to Tatooine again, but for me it wasn't the place. And the last scene, the question of who are you, I'm Rey Skywalker. I didn't like this at all. Just say you're a Palpatine and be proud of who you are, or just say that you're Rey and don't even bother with Palpatine. If anything, just be really proud. I'm a Palpatine, but not the bad one that you all know. I'm going to be a new Palpatine that's better and good. And let's be honest, you're not a Skywalker. And so was there too much to happen in just a couple of hours in this film? I mean, given their due, they just about answered the questions that people wanted. They didn't leave anything open for the future. We're always going to have the question is what happened to the characters next? But they answered pretty much all the questions and brought in all the backstories that I think that they wanted to and people wanted answered. So they did that really well. But was the story too bogged down with stuff to tell? Maybe it would have improved it all by being a bit more, a bit slower and methodical. Was all Rey's story of jumping from place to place to place rushed? Potentially. I mean, for me, it's too quick and there's too much pace to it. It could have told the story better by just slowing down a lot. But then they wouldn't have answered all the questions that everyone wanted. Now, is this a fitting ending to the 9-film Skywalker saga? You'd probably say yes. I'd probably agree with that. But I'd say it's a very safe ending. Good wins over evil again. We could have and should have seen this coming and predicted it, because there's nothing new. We saw it with the entire original trilogy and Return of the Jedi. Now, I know I've been fairly harsh on this film and the trilogy as a whole, but my bar was so high and it just didn't deliver. There were just too many issues with it. And I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it, because I did. It was a very entertaining action, adventure, sci-fi film, but definitely not a good Star Wars one. So where now for the films? That's potentially the end of the Skywalker saga, but I highly doubt that's the end of the characters. I'm fully expecting more stories about Rey, Finn and Poe, whether that's spin-off films or TV series, whether they're going to be set after the trilogy, before, during, who knows, but I definitely think that we're going to see more. I'd prefer it if we didn't see any of those characters again, because I didn't really like them, but I know a lot of people really liked them, so I think they will get their wish. Now, I'd also like to see a sidestep away from this part of the Star Wars universe. I've loved this section, I love the whole Skywalker stuff, definitely, but I think we need a break from it. Maybe even a break from lightsabers and Jedi and Sith. There are so many areas to be explored and discovered. I mean, the options are literally endless. I know I keep on going on about the books and things like that. I mean, I'd love to see characters from some of those come out and become part of the canon world. I mean, I doubt we're going to see much or any of that actually happen, but of course I can definitely hope so. I mean, there will be new stories. There's going to be so many. Disney probably has a massive, massive plan set out for the Star Wars universe, and it's just going to keep on getting bigger and bigger. So we're definitely intrigued to see what's going to happen. I mean, we've already got The Mandalorian, which is an interesting step. I've definitely enjoyed it. It's not quite the story I wanted, but let's face it, I'm really picky, as you can probably imagine. One thing's for sure, this is not the end of Star Wars. So, until the next adventure, may the Force be with you. Always.